You're listening to Tangents on 91.7 KALW. My name's Anil Prasad. I'm your tangential guest DJ tonight. You just heard a three-song set, starting off with Weather Report's 125th Street Congress from the 1973 album Sweet Nighter. From there, we went to a track by Bill Laswell and Sacred System called Exhibit I, and that features Zakir Hussain on tabla, and that's from an album called Nagwal Sight. From there, we went to David Torn, a wonderful guitarist who put out an album called Cloud About Mercury on ECM Records back in '86, and that featured Tony Levin on bass and Bill Bruford on percussion.
And Mark Isham on trumpet.
As well, that's true.
Yeah, I remember interviewing Mark probably around 92-ish, something like that. And I don't pretend to know all of Mark's recordings, but I am so wowed by that album. You know, the year that came out, that was my favorite album of the year, Cloud About Mercury. And I said, Mark, how do you feel about your contribution to the recording? And he said it's the very best playing I've ever done.
That was a truly boundary-breaking album for all the musicians involved. It was one of the most pivotal recordings they had ever been involved in. It was also a turning point for ECM into the rock universe. In 1986, I think ECM was, known for being very much a jazz label and a chamber-oriented music label. And along comes David Torn and the King Crimson Rhythm section with an album full of electronic percussion and these extended, very prog rock-oriented pieces. And I think it brought a lot of new listeners into the ECM fold. And I think it really set the stage for a really amazing career for David Torn following that.
But he didn't, or I'm trying to remember, I don't seem to recall another ECM record from David.
David had a previous ECM solo album with a percussionist named Jeffrey Gordon, and then he had two albums with a group called the Everyman Band before that. So he had a few other records on ECM predating that one.
Right, but so this one was the pinnacle.
It was the pinnacle.
And why didn't it then, beyond that, continue with ECM?
Well, I think there were some personality issues with ECM, and I think David was not particularly happy with the way the album was mixed. He actually wanted the percussion and bass to be more up in the mix, and Manfred Eicher, the head producer and
owner-founder
of ECM, apparently took the reins on the mixing and kind of toned it down just a little bit. I guess he didn't want ECM to become known as the prog rock label. So David took his business and went elsewhere, and oddly, the elsewhere ended up being Windham Hill, the really rockin' Windham Hill records.
Well, at that time, Bob Duskus was head of A&R, Bob, who fills in for me a lot and is the co-founder of 6 Degrees Records.
Exactly. So Bob commissioned David to do a pretty rock-oriented album called Door X for Windham Hill with like Hendrix covers and David actually singing. Complete left turn from Clyde About Mercury, and that album pretty much sunk without a trace. And I think David very much returned to Cloud About Mercury for subsequent albums that he made for the CMP label. And but it has a happy ending because David ended up back on ECM with an album called Presence a couple of years ago, and I believe he's working on a solo guitar album and also an orchestral album for ECM as we speak.
However, he went through quite a journey because of loss of hearing in one ear. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, David had a brain tumor called an acoustic neuroma. It's something we talk about in quite a bit of detail in the book, the physical journey that he took. And he was on tour, I believe, in Germany with a bassist named Michael Manring and Alex DeGrassi, a fine guitarist, when all these symptoms manifested themselves. And he had to cut that tour short, got diagnosed, really changed his life, lost his hearing in one ear. But the community of musicians he worked with really surrounded him and supported him financially and morally. And it's really interesting. He's a world-renowned and sought-after producer and soundtrack engineer. And maybe even more interesting than that, one of the world's foremost surround sound producers at this point, and he only hears with one ear. How does that work? I don't know. Only he knows. But yeah, one of my favorite musicians of all time and a good friend of mine.
And in the middle of that set, we would be remiss not to talk about Bill Laswell And that piece, wonderful tangential coincidence, is your favorite and my favorite track by Bill Laswell, Exhibit I. Laswell is similar to Joe Zawinul in how outspoken he is and not shy about saying how great he is. And there is truth to a lot of what he says. There's one line in the book he says, "I thought we made the greatest progressive fusion in the history of time." That is the voice of Bill Laswell.
He's talking about his label Axiom Records that existed throughout the 90s and maybe even the late 80s that put out a lot of pivotal world fusion albums with an amazing cast of musicians, again, including Zakir Hussain and bassist Jonas Hellberg is also in the book. Pharoah Sanders, master musicians of Jajuka, lots of people appeared on that label during its time.
And how is it that he was able to get, I call it the Bill Laswell Mafia, why did so many people want to play on Laswell recordings? I mean, you look at Exhibit I, there are at least 10 plus world-class artists contributing it. He had this vision of cross-pollination and seemingly an army of musicians willing to contribute to it.
Well, the thing I think with Bill, there's a purity of intent that the musicians see when they speak to him. This is a guy that's traveled all over the world. He's lived in Africa. He's really sought to get to the musical and spiritual roots of what he does, as opposed to dealing with world music in a really superficial way. And he talks about that in the chapter about how some world music labels that shall go nameless do things in a really, really superficial way where they just sort of pluck people, record a few riffs, sample them, lay them over whatever pre-manufactured beat there is out there, put it out and call it a world music revolution. And that's not what he's interested in. He's interested in getting musicians in a room, playing, interacting.
Organically.
He'll fly places. He'll live as they do, and he's unafraid of getting his hands dirty.
One of the most, I think, compelling exchanges in the book is when he speaks about why it didn't work out with him and Miles Davis. And I understand that it's a rather sanitized version in the book. Maybe live you can even be more unsanitized if you want to be. But what was it about the project that made it so that it didn't happen? And we should really preface it by saying that, if I remember correctly, it was the collaboration he did producing Herbie Hancock in, I guess, 1983 when he did Future Shock, and Rocket came out. And a lot of people wanted to work with Laswell after that. That was a big hit for Herbie, and it had, it was kind of like, I don't know, that it sort of was a hip-hoppy kind of tune in a way, right? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely a DJ-influenced piece. But to answer your question, so there were two intents with the book, and one was, number one, to really reflect a wide variety of artists and let them have free reign with their thoughts. And the second was to not get sued. So, yeah, I admit that the Laswell Miles story in the book is a little sanitized, but Bill was not happy with the setup when Miles Davis's camp approached him to produce the album that ended up becoming Tutu, which was a gigantic global hit that Marcus Miller ended up taking the reins for. There's a producer involved.
Tommy LaPuma.
Yes, and let's just say that was oil and water. And I think the idea was that Bill would produce half of the record and Marcus Miller would produce the other half of the record. And like Bill says in the book, he thought that Tommy LaPuma wanted to take a really, really conservative approach to Miles, wanted to sanitize it, make it very pop-like, and that is exactly what Tutu ended up being. And what Bill wanted to do was go back to the late 60s and really have Miles do these huge extended suites.
And play with African artists.
Exactly, and do something really experimental and out there, more street, more rocket-style stuff like he did with Herbie Hancock. And that's what Miles always wanted to do. Miles has always wanted to make a street record. That's what he always said. That's what he was doing with On the Corner. and that's what he was trying to do in the 80s, even though I think a lot of those 80s albums were pretty horrible.
But what I don't understand, Miles, not a shy guy, asserts himself. Why would someone like Tommy LaPuma control him so much where Miles would say, if this is what Tommy wants, with Marcus Miller has only done right by me, why not do half and half? I mean, if he really wanted to do, if his vision ultimately was to do what Laswell had in mind, why don't you just say, screw you, Tommy, I really want to do this?
I think the Miles Davis that came out of the post-retirement era, just to back up a bit, Miles Davis took a pretty long career break from the mid-'70s onwards. And when he reemerged in the early 80s, I think Miles was ready to let other people lead and have marketing plans put in front of him and have A&R setups that would create music for the marketplace. And I think that's what you get on albums like Decoy and Tutu and Siesta and
You're Under
Doo-Wop.
Arrest.
Yeah, these are not great Miles Davis albums. I mean, there were two really good Miles Davis albums in the 80s, and that's Aura and Star People. So he was capable of rising to the challenge occasionally. But I think Miles was ready to just be Miles Davis, global jazz superstar, play to huge audiences, get the adulation, maybe collect some of the money that he was owed or deserved, and again, let go of the reins and let people like Tommy LaPuma guide him. And Tutu was a global smash, gigantic record. And so in that way, Miles got what he wanted. Did he get a record of that has long-lasting impact? Probably not. I don't think people really think of the 80s albums as being very essential.
And to Tommy's credit, he named it Tutu.
There you go.
You want to get back to David Torn for one more tune here.
Yeah, I thought we'd play a track by a group called Bruford Levant Upper Extremities, or Blue. And that was actually more or less a reunion of the Cloud Mercury band in the late 90s with a trumpet player named Chris Botti substituting for Mark Isham. And Chris obviously now a global superstar in his own right.
Yeah, I used to play, people don't know, a lifetime ago I was the music director at Smooth Jazz KKSF, still doing tangents at the same time, and Chris Botti was not a huge name yet, but he was a rising star in the smooth jazz world.
Yeah, this collaboration was, I think, just a pet project for Chris, who obviously now plays with Sting and can probably play to 5,000 or 6,000 people a night worldwide, wherever he wants. But they wanted to recapture the chemistry of Clyde About Mercury with this group, and there's a fantastic track on the live album called Blue Nights by this group, and it's called Etude Revisited, and I think it really revisits the magic of Clyde About Mercury well.
Bill Bruford, Tony Levin, David Torn, and anyone I'm forgetting there? Where are you? There you are. Who am I forgetting?
Chris Bodie.
Oh, Chris Bodie, of course. I wouldn't forget Chris. Chris on trumpet doing, to his credit, he's incredibly versatile. He can be at home in kind of more avant-garde settings and in pop settings and very antiseptic jello jazz settings. Chris can do it all. That's called Blue Nights, the album, and Etude Revisited. All of the tunes we've been playing tonight, you can find out more about them at tangents.com and go to the KALW playlist. Harry is working hard to get all that information there with lots of live links. Also, you can link to Anil Prasad's website, which is Innerviews, I-N-N-E-R, views.org. You can order his book, learn more about what he does as a tangential music journalist. And all of the artists that we've played tonight since 9 o'clock are featured in his book. And I don't just mean featured like a page. I mean, there are chapters on each one of these artists, from Ani DeFranco, Michael Hedges, Leo Kottke, Chris Whitley, Bela Fleck, Shows Albanul, Bill Laswell, David Torn, Bill Bruford. Those are just the artists that we've played so far tonight. 24 artists in all in the book, and all of them tangential. So you have a song you want to play by Noah.
Yeah, there's a song called Manhattan Tel Aviv from an album she did called Calling that reflects the journey she's taken as a musician and as a human being. She's lived a lot of her life in both Tel Aviv and New York City, and she draws parallels between the experience of both places, both in terms of violence and in terms of the opportunities they represent.
So this is Noah on the Anil Prasad Tangential Experience.
To the deep south side, where it's very violent. A bouquet of violets lies trampled to the ground. Manhattan, Tel Aviv, with a detour to the deep south side, where it's very violent. A bouquet of violets south side. Manhattan, Tel Aviv, with a detour to the deep south side.
From Noah's Manhattan, Tel Aviv, from her album Calling, we go to David Sylvian and Riverside from his 1986 album Gone to Earth, featuring Robert Fripp on guitar and Mel Collins on sax.
Blessed with all the thunder in the world.
So you left me on my own to complete the mission. Now I'm leaving it all behind. I'm going hunting. I'm the hunter. I'm the hunter. I'm going hunting. I'm the hunter. I'm the hunter. I'm the hunter. I'm the hunter.
You just heard David Sylvian's Riverman from his Gone to Earth album featuring Robert Fripp and Mel Collins. And from there we went to Bjork's Hunter from her album Homogenic.
Bjork featured in your book and also David Sylvian.
Yeah, two leading lights of pop innovation, I think. People that are trying to bring in a lot of diverse genres and influences into what they do, and yet still strike, a chord amongst the public. It's pretty amazing that they've kind of gotten away with what they have.
Gone to Earth it's really unusual because you've got some tracks with David's on vocals, and then much of the album is instrumental, and David is really more the conceptualist and not really playing on those tracks. One guy who would have been another natural for your book, if I'm bold enough to say, and that would be Bill Nelson.
Yeah, Bill is absolutely a grand innovator of guitar and composer, and a very idiosyncratic presence in the music.
And another
universe.
one who was considered by many to be a guitar god particularly when he was in Bebop Deluxe, and then really gave up the guitar for quite a while.
Right.
And kind of did the Chris Whitley thing, went into pop synth world, and is also very well known as a producer now, too.
He is, and Bill just reemerged, actually, and is in the middle of recording a live album and DVD, which I believe is pretty imminent in the next few months, and I think he might even be touring again in the UK.
All right. Well, we've got 25 minutes left, Anil. Anil Prasad is our guest. He is a music journalist and author of a fairly new book anyhow, called Innerviews, Music Without Borders, Extraordinary Conversations with Extraordinary Musicians. You can go to innerviews.org, and 24 chapters on musicians, most of whom I play regularly on Tangents. It's not every day that I can talk about a book who promotes artists who are played on Tangents. So Anil is a kindred soul for sure. So in the next 25 minutes that we have, where do you want to go?
I think we're going to start with a tune by Stanley Clarke, Al Di Meola, and Jean-Luc Ponty called Renaissance off a trio album they did called Rite of Strings.
And Stanley is in concert at Yoshi's.
I think he's there for one more night with an 8 p.m. show at the Oakland Club on Sunday.
There you go. Stanley Clarke, Jean-Luc Ponty, Al Di Meola on Tangents. A very dear friend and amazing Turkish singer. Her name is Sumru Ayıren, who will be performing in the Bay Area very shortly. We'll talk about that in a moment. This is Tangents on 91.7 with Jonas Hellborg.
name's Anil Prasad, your tangential guest DJ tonight, and you just heard Jonas Hellborg with the sarangi player Sultan Khan and Fazal Qureshi on percussion, who happens to be Zakir Hussein's brother. The track is called Mystery Conquered from an album called Friends Across Borders, and the first track in that
and we should say way out of print.
Way out of print. You're going to have to do some digging to find that CD.
And Jonas Hellborg, yet another tangential artist in Anil Prasad's book. And Jonas probably best known for his work in one of the incarnations of the Mahavishnu Orchestra with John McLaughlin.
That's right.
And also doing, I guess, some really adventurous Indian cross-pollination.
Yeah, it's Jonas's thing right now. He's doing a lot of stuff with a percussionist named Salva Ganesh, who happens to be the son of Viku Vinyakram from the original Shakti. The first track in that set was by Stanley Clarke, Al Di Meola, and Jean-Luc Ponty called Renaissance, a remake of a track from an electric fusion album Ponty did called Aurora, and that version is from an album called Rite of Strings.
And Stanley has an engagement at Yoshi's in Oakland. The last night is tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening. I believe it's a solo acoustic upright bass, right? I think that is. I think that's what it is. I think it's a solo show. The middle tune with the vocal and that Fender Rhodes and the oud in the beginning was Sumru Ayiriren, who has become my dearest friend in Turkey. She's also one of the great singers in Turkey. And she and another artist who has been on a couple of Tangents Turkey music tours based in Istanbul, Cenk Erdoğan, who plays a guitar, fretless guitar, in fact, he and Sumru are being sponsored by the 2000 Nun alum of a Tangents Turkey music tour, Ron Scudder. Ron loved the tour so much that he said, I miss these guys. I miss the music. I miss Turkey. Let me bring Turkey to California. And he decided to create a fund which is sponsoring their presence in the Bay Area. And if you're interested in the concert itinerary, shoot me an email at tangentsradio@gmail.com. tangentsradio@gmail.com. But suffice it to say, they're playing April 13th, 16th, 17th, 19th, 21st. Actually, on the 21st, Cenk and Sumru are playing with a few musicians, including Kai Eckhart, who is one of the best fretless bass players around and has also played with John McLaughlin. And the Sumru track that we heard is from a Kalan release, which is a great label out of Turkey. And the name of the album is called Issiz, Issiz. Well, we are not going to have time to listen to John McLaughlin, but I do want to mention that McLaughlin has a really nice chapter with Zakir Hussain in Anil's book. It's got to be still a very amazing moment for you. I mean, you had your first child not that long ago, a few years ago, 3 years old, right?
Yeah.
And now your first book. It's sort of an offspring of sorts. It's got to be a great feeling to have a book.
Kind of a baby in and of itself, certainly a long process to get there.
And one of the things which I was amazed to hear was that before you came on the air, you mentioned that your 3-year-old son requested Michael Oldfield Tubular Bells. What kind of 3-year-old are you raising?
That's true, yes. It's a very dangerous musical mentality. No Barney, just progressive rock. But he saw actually a really interesting remake that just hit YouTube by the Brooklyn Organ Orchestra, comprised of like 10 very young up-and-coming female keyboardists. And it's really worth checking out. You might want to Google that one.
Wow. Your son is amazing. I still can't get over being a fan of Mike Oldfield at 3 years old. Again, the book is Innerviews. And also, this is your website, innerviews.org or .com or .net. They'll all go there. Innerviews, Music Without Borders, extraordinary conversations with extraordinary musicians, including virtually all the music you've heard on Tangents tonight are featured in the book by Anil Prasad. So, Anil, thanks again for coming on and for bringing so much music with you.
Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.